Alright, so I'm gonna go over entries and kind of examples. This has nothing to really do with any specific strategy other than getting your entry down and execution down correctly off support and resistant levels, previous highs, previous lows, and just any level of interest that you're trying to get into. So we're gonna start with Tesla here for this example. Now, number one thing, always, 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 is you always want to find your levels on a higher time frame. So, for example, June 30th was that weekly high. I was paying attention to, this was an older resistant level, don't really worry about that. June 30th, though, was at 325, which was that area of significance for me that I really liked. Obviously 322 was this macro area, so obviously seeing that build to make it a little bit more or less risk adverse was key. Um, so basically, you find your levels on the daily, hourly, weekly, whatever. But every time you're looking for an entry, you always want to drop down to a lower time frame. You need to see the smaller picture, right? The overall picture on the hourly and daily, you're not going to see all this, right? You're not going to see all this middle stuff. So when you go in the hourly, you don't see the whole story. So the hourly doesn't tell the whole story in the middle. It doesn't tell the war story, right? So you go down to the 5 minute. So now, okay, hey, so you see that the June 30th high is not just one straight candle. You can kind of see what happens, oops, what happens in the middle, right? So now we kind of have a look at like, hey, okay, so during that hour candle, we did actually break back down and actually get another retest of this level, right? So basically, what I would have done, and I know what a lot of people struggle with too, is especially when stocks kind of start to break out um, very fast like this, you're always going to get some type of retest. 80% of the time, you're going to get a retest. Never chase that amateur move. You never want to chase. So for this example, we broke above previous day high, which was good. That's a start. So that gives us, we should not be shorting. If we're above previous day high, we should not be shorting. We should look onto the next resistant area. So June 30th was the next resistant area, right? So amateur move was here. Amateur move, we did break above it, but now we know that the high of day was 326.20, right? Well, we can still play this resistant level, right? So what I would have done here was, okay, I'm on the 1 minute here, but 5 minute is good. You don't really need to go to the 1 minute, but this is for an example. I would have dropped to the smaller time frame, so we can kind of see we put in a high of day. We actually did put a low of day. So this is your max pain, right? This is the beauty of this specific entry model, you could say. Um, as soon as, so we put in the low of day, um, we held the 50 EMA if you use any of that, whatever. So we put in the low of day, so the low of day here is this 323 level, so 323 is that low of day, right? This is your max pain. This is your max pain. So if it reverses here, if the stock goes under here, you get out. Now, this is the beauty of this, right? So now, what I would have done was we put in the low of day, we chopped for a little bit, but as soon as we started to build over this level, I would have gotten here. So this was a good spot to get in, and my stop would have been obviously this would have been my stop. This max pain would have been my stop. So knowing that, I can give myself a little bit of a wiggle room. I don't necessarily have to wait for the second entry here, but if you do want to be more on the safe side, you could wait for that second entry of, okay, that 326.22. Once that breaks, you would get in. Obviously, you would have had no issues here. You could have set your stop at a little under the resistant level. So you could have done that. and saved yourself a little bit of time, effort, and money doing that way, being safe. You don't want to have necessarily a larger stop, but if you do want to have a larger stop, you kind of want to make an extra few bucks. You're okay with a little bit of risk adverse. You can get in right at that breach of that level. Is it the safest way? Yes and no. Is it going to be one of the more profitable risk to reward and kind of just easier? Yes, because you already have your stop, you already have your initial stop, right? So you have that in mind. You have the level of when to get in. So you drop to a lower time frame. As long as the buying pressure is there, you get in right when it breaches and builds over, and then you would wait. And obviously you got a good move. Or if you want to be a little bit on the safer side, you can wait for that second entry, put your stop at the bottom, and yeah, that would have been a good entry. Um, I'm gonna go over another example. Obviously, Tesla is gonna be a more of a volatile name, but basically, when you're at a level of resistance, especially if it's pumping super hard, you never want to chase. You always want to wait for a dip and retest, and obviously, we got a dip and retest. Now, another thing what we could have done was, let's say, let's say instead of we stopping at 323.21, right? So 320, 324 was that low of day. Let's say we did retest the previous day high, which was 322.57. So let's say, let's just say boom. Make a candle real quick. Oh, this is terrible. Okay, boom. So our new low of day is 322.26. Now let's just say it's kind of just chilling here, chilling here, chilling here. And then we build back above. We kind of base here. We come back down. That's a really terrible drawing. So now we know that right here would be this 322.74 would kind of be, we want to see that to, we want to build over that, right? So as soon as we actively build over that new short-term resistant, then we would get in, we would set this low of day of 322, let's just say 322.27. We would set that as our low of day, and our stop would be tight on the stop. And it's what we want to see is an active build above 322.57. So let's just say boom, we kind of tap, we kind of tap, we kind of tap, and then we start actively building. Now, the June 30th high can serve as a take profit. So let's just say we come back down a little bit, boom, 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 and then boom. Now we would take our profit at the June 30th high is serving as kind of, if it's a little bit more rangy, because now, like, let's just say this was a high of day of 326.27, then we're kind of like in an inside range, but we also did have a deeper bounce on a previous resistant level that became support. So now that we bounced off the support, that was a good trade. So there is that too. So instead of being greedy and trying to chase this and say, let's say you filled at the high of day, you got stopped out. But if you waited like a normal person, like a good trader, you would have got the retest at 322.57 and caught a good 3-point move. Basically a 3-point move, which would have been all you needed. So that's actually a perfect example. Now, let me just remove this all on my chart, just so I don't have to deal with it later. Let's look at AZ. Let's look at a slower name. Actually, no, let's look at a name with some momentum. So let's go to Coin. Okay, Coin. Coin was a perfect example. Now let's go to the hourly. Let me go back to the cursor. So we're on the hourly, right? So basically, let's put this. So that was yesterday's high. So let's go back down to the 5-minute. Now, as you can see, we did builds over this hourly high. um, in pre-market session, and you can kind of see like, hey, we never really got that retest we wanted. It was close, so like I was saying about the previous day high retest, if we were able to get this in a relatively fast manner, we could have had a bounce, obviously later in the day. Now that we're selling off, you don't necessarily really want to bounce off that. So that would have been a good trade, but obviously we didn't get that, and that's perfectly okay. So what I would do, right, is I would go either looking at the hourly time frame and be like, okay, so momentum kind of stopped here, right, at this 437.94, right? So this 437.94, which would have been that 10 a.m. candle, or yeah, that 10 a.m. candle. So on something like this on the momentum, so basically like I was saying, pullback, right? So the pullback, always wait for the pullback. If the momentum's trending, the volume is there, you can actually take the remount of the hourly, right? So 437.94, right? Let me go down to the 1 minute just so you guys can kind of see this a little bit more clearly. We go to the 1 minute. So the 437.94, once again, you would wait for us to build over it, right? So you'd build over it, and then you would just set a pre-standard stop, right? So maybe like a 5 minute low. So 435.78 would be your stop, right? So let's just say this is your stop. You would have gotten in here, right? You could have waited for the second entry if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. So this 438.34, let's just say, right? So you get in at that second entry, and then obviously you can see it played out really well. You got good move, and this was at the highs as well, 445, right? So instead of being, one of those chasing, 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 even let's just say you chased here, right? Let's say you chased here, you got in at 434, and boom, you got stopped out like a dummy, okay? You're just a super big dummy. If you see something like this and you want to chase because it's above previous day high, and you see something like this and you're gonna chase, just call yourself a dummy. You're a dummy. I'm a big fat dummy. Wait for the retest. Wait for the remount, right? So don't be a dummy. Always wait. Now, there's another way you could play this too, right? So let's just say this 15-minute high, right? This 433. So another way too is you can actually use these opening range highs and lows as a entry point, right? So obviously, let's go back down to the hourly. 433.61 was that opening range high. So let's say if you were a dummy and where I circled earlier and you got in there, boom, you got stopped out here. But if you waited, not like a dummy, waited for that retest, let's just say your second entry was there. Let me actually clean this up for you guys. Oops. Hold on. Let me just remove everything. Okay. Let's just say you got in here as your second entry. So boom, you set your stop. Let's just say you set your stop at 433. That's a good whole number. Whole number stop, right? So 433 is your stop. It retests that 15-minute again, obviously. So you got in, you had a little bit of a drawdown, and then boom, it goes, right? And then obviously you could have added at the remount spot over here, but that's another opportunity, right? So super momentum, right? Super momentum, super momentum, super momentum. Instead of chasing and getting stopped, like say you added there, and then you get panic emotional, get stopped there, or if you chase at the opening range high and then get stopped here, wait, be patient, just know amateur move, amateur move, amateur move. Don't be a dummy, don't be a dummy. I'm just gonna keep saying it. Wait for confirmation. So that would have been your confirmation. So opening range high confirmation. This has nothing to do with strategy. This is just pure entry, pure support and resistance. You can use whatever strategy to make this work. Now, let me give you an example of, let's just say, NVIDIA. Trying to find an example that, when did this thing go just nuts? I think it was here, maybe? No. Actually, no, it was right here. Yeah, it was right here. Now, let's just say, you're one of those people that was like, hey, like, this thing is going nuts, right? This thing is going crazy, boom, it's above previous day high. You're getting FOMO because it gapped up so much. Um, and you can kind of see that we were sort of close to the overnight high, and you're like, okay, boom, I got in because, I thought it was gonna go crazy, but you can kind of see the momentum wasn't there because when something gaps up super hard, the likelihood of a gap and crap, instead of FOMOing because boom, it went, bonkers, just don't look at it. Just get away from it. A gap and crap after a huge gap is you're not gonna make a lot of money. If anything, you're gonna lose money. So definitely don't don't do that. It's not it's never gonna be good. Let's go to another name like actually let me let's go Google. Oh wow, this is a perfect example, right? So we're above yesterday's highs, right? So let's just say boom, above yesterday's highs. Let's just say, oh no, pre-market's so good. Oh my goodness. So you get in like a dummy prematurely because you're like, okay, this thing's gonna rip. You get in at the opening candle and boom, you got stopped out because no confirmation. You think, oh, because pre-market is so good and strong, I'm gonna make all this money and get in because I'm a genius. No, you're stupid. Never get in off pre-market confirmation unless, honestly, never. It's just never a good idea. Um, But let's say like okay, like if you were smart, you would wait, let it fizzle out because you know it's strong. The stock is strong. Obviously, this is telling you this stock is strong. So you would wait for take profit like it did. Let's say okay, if you were smart, you would have waited for the previous day high confirmation. Obviously, you would have waited for the retest, right? So puts in that low here. Let's just say let me puts in this low. Okay, so now you know that 184 is your max pain. You wait for the reclaim, right? So you wait to build over. Let's say even 184.18 is the second entry. So boom, it comes back down. 184.18 is that second entry. You get in at that second entry, and boom, look, you had a great move. You had a great move. No drawdown. Wow, good job. Good job. You're smart. Later in the day, it does it again. Okay, boom, it breaks back below the low of day, puts a new low of day, right? Double tap low of day, so 183.70. So boom, 183.70 is your level. You wait for this entry so you can kind of the retest, sorry. So you see, boom, 184.22 is gonna be your second entry, right? So you get in, maybe you have a little bit of drawdown, and boom, look, you have absolutely no drawdown after that. That kind of looks like a face. Looks like a squid. Anyways, boom, no drawdown after that. You're just chilling rest of day. So, instead of being a dummy, you just wait. You be smart. Oops, I don't know what I'm doing here. Sorry guys, I'm being dumb here. I don't, let me get rid of all this. But yeah, so basically, you always want to wait for confirmation. So my main thing for execution is you never want to just chase based off the pre-market, right? If a stock is strong, it's always going to give a retest. You're always going to see a retest into a previous day high. opening range high or low, you're just gonna have a retest into any significant support or resistance, and then you would wait for second entry. So you're either gonna wait for that hourly remount, right? So hourly remount, second entry, previous day high or support, reclaim and retest, and then you would set that low day or high day as your stop. That's basically it. If you guys do have, sorry, I'm a little OCD, so I'm kind of going back. But yeah, even on NQ, I'll do this real quick. Pre-market, over-exaggerated. Boom, we broke a bev, we made a new all-time high, but we started coming back down, started coming back down. If you chased up here, you're an idiot, right? So you'd wait for that opening range low or high, any resistant level, right? So then boom, I actually took this trade, wait for that retest, and then boom, you got your move because you weren't dumb. Then you'd wait for that second entry. So just be smart.